Hello, everyone. I'm Raj Changadoo. This is Property Investing 2.0, and my guest today is Juswant Rai. Juswant is very well known in the UK property investing world. Him and his wife Sylvia, for many years, ran the infamous Berkshire Property Meet, which at the time was the biggest property networking event in the country. He began his career in IT and was Mr. 9 to 5 for life, working the same company for over 11 years before discovering a new way through property. And since beginning his property journey in 2005, he has gone on to build a successful portfolio focusing mainly on HMOs and creating the lifestyle that he wants and he needs. I'm thrilled to introduce him to you. Juswant, hello and welcome to the show. How are you?
Well, very good, Raj. Thank you for having me on.
No, absolute pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here with us today. There's a few areas we want to dive into. We want to learn about your investing lessons and tips, your insights into networking and how powerful that can be for people. But I want to start with your eureka moment. You worked in you worked in IT for many years and you confessed to being Mr. 9 to 5.
Yeah.
What changed for you? How did you get started in property?
There's lots of little things that happened. I think I was always unsettled, if you get what I mean. Even though everybody assumed I was Mr. 9 to 5 and I was going to do that for the rest of my life, and I assumed that as well. But there was probably two things. One was I read a book. I'm sure a lot of people have read Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And that got me thinking, and it got me thinking a lot about what am I doing. I was in a pattern where everybody I worked with and around were do your 40 years, get your 2/3 final salary pension, and just don't get fired in that 40 years. Just don't rock the boat. Just be Mr. Grey. Just stay there. And I bought into that mentality, and I honestly did. But reading Rich Dad Poor Dad started me thinking about different things. And then one morning on the train, I was reading the newspaper, the Metro, the happy-go-lucky paper we read in the mornings. And it said on the front page, you will not retire till you are 70. And I remember sitting on the train thinking, God, that is depressing. And I got to work and I was having a meeting with my boss, and he was a really great guy. I can't thank him enough for everything he did for me. And he said to me this line that was an absolute killer. He goes, me and you, we're lifers. We're here for life. And I just looked at him and went, that's 32 years from now. Based on that newspaper advert. Yeah, it is an advert for depression. I thought, I can't do this. I cannot do another 32 years of commuting, doing all the stuff that I've been doing for the last 20 years. And I knew I needed to make some changes. And I had my wife and I, Sylvia, we had a serious conversation about our future in 2005 and what we were going to do. And property was one of those obvious things. There was so much stuff on TV. You couldn't move for property TV programs. They're everywhere. And they were all showing how easy it was. You could just waltz into an auction house, wave your hand about, buy a property and make a load of money. If that was only true.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think most people who've joined me on the show have mentioned Homes Under the Hammer more than I mentioned the name of the show. To be honest, it definitely painted a certain picture for people back then, didn't it?
Well, there was that, and there was other programs. But one of the things I picked up from one or two of the people was um, people back then, because we were going for a massive growth period. And I remember one of the ladies, I think it was Sarah Beanie, said it. She said the only reason you made any money was because the market was going up. You could have bought this house, sat on it for 6 months, done no refurb, nothing, not spent a penny on it, and you would have made more money. And that was the case back then. The market was flying up. It was just, it was seemed to be on a never-ending cycle where it was going to go up. And I knew people were invested in property, and I wanted to find out more. And I did what most people do, get onto Google, started Googling, and I Googled property investing. And one of the first things that came up top of the listings was a property networking event, literally 200 meters from where I worked. And I thought, what's one of these? Well, I've heard of networking events, but I did networking in IT, which I thoroughly hated. But But networking for property, I thought, what's that? So I just found out when it was, where it was, and I went down for my first one. And it was downstairs in a pub. And I remember walking in and I thought, what am I doing? I have no idea. I've never invested in property. All these people are going to laugh at me. And I walked in, I think it was a fiver. And I actually paid a fiver for 5 minutes because that's about how long I lasted in that room. I just had a panic attack and left because I didn't think I belonged there.
Really?
I literally walked out and I ran.
Do you know what? I was going to talk about networking a bit later. Actually, no, let's get into it now. It's a perfect time about how daunting networking can be for people. You know,
Yeah.
I think I was exactly the same as you. When I first went to my networking event, first property networking event, I sat there in the back quiet, didn't know what to do, which is fine for maybe your first one. You're just trying to get used to it. But it is an absolute art, isn't it, for some people, to the networking side of things?
I think it's the challenge is, and I did a few. I said one of the when we're brought up, we taught us two things which are absolutely useless when you go networking: don't talk to strangers and don't speak until you're spoken to.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're programmed that at an early age, and you go to a networking event, you're like, oh, what am I supposed to be doing here? And the thing is, we do things in our own head. We think, oh, all these people know each other, right? All these people, because they're already talking. If you arrive a little bit late, there's people chatting to each other, and they're all experts. Everybody knows more than you do, and there's these little things that go on in your brain. And then, but as you go, and to be honest, when I left that first one, I rang Sylvia up, said I'm never going back. It's just too much. And so I went the one the next month because I thought, this is stupid. I've got to go back. And I was very honest with people. And I said to them, look, I'm brand new. I know nothing, right? Absolutely nothing about buying property. And everybody was, that's fine. Come and have a chat. Why are you here? And I was like, that's very shocking. They're being nice to me. And I had some great conversations with some really nice people. And I bumped into other people that were brand new. And then I found out there are people who know nothing about property, who have never invested, to people you'll bump into and you'll be sat next to, and they might own 500 houses. But you don't know. And you don't know until you sit down and start talking to people. And the one thing that made it easy was we're all there for the same reason. We all want to invest or get into property, and we all want to, some people want to get out of the situation, some people, and the conversations I found were very easy because we were all on the same page. We're all wanting to do something in property, and we all wanted to learn. Well, most of us did anyway, all wanting to learn. And that made the conversations a lot simpler and a lot, and I am not a natural networker. You can ask anybody who knew me before we start running a networking event. I'm very quiet, don't want to talk to people. But if you go to networking events and you're very quiet, don't want to talk to people, you're not going to get to know anyone.
That's it. You're not going to get the value out of why you were there in the first place. And I find the two extremes are, and I was definitely in the quiet camp. I would go to a networking event and I'd almost sit in the back and stay quiet. And if you're driving sometimes, these days there's a networking event potentially 15, 20 minutes away. But, before you're driving an hour, driving 2 hours sometimes, and you go all that way and you think, I've just gone all that way to sit in the back of a room and not talk to anyone or not learn anything. And that's not why you're in it in the first place. And then on the other side, the other extreme, you've got the person who's all about me, right? He's out there handing his business cards to everyone, not listening to other people, not listening to what he can learn from people. And I find that doesn't work either. And I wonder, having run your event for many years, what are some of the mistakes you've seen people make at networking events?
The classic one is the one you just said. And we used to call them carpet bombers because we'd see their business cards all over the floor at the end because they'd just walk up to people and they'd hand them a business card and then they walk off and the person go, who are you? Why have you given me a business card for? And we'd find their business card discarded all over the place. People need to make a connection. And one thing is say to people, look, it's just chat, because you don't know what that person's there for. And the most important thing is I used to just ask people, how's it going? Where are you from? Because where you're from, you can work out actually, oh, so you're from there, and you might bump into somebody else that's from the same place later on, and you could put these two people together. What do you do? And not just in property, because a lot of people were doing something else, and property was something that they only just started. What they're looking for. How can I help them? It always became about how can I help you? Who can I introduce you to? And I found that really helped. And by asking people some questions and open-ended questions and just using what we use the least is use our ears and listen, you can learn so much about people, because most people's favorite topic is, guess what? Themselves.
Absolutely.
And if you get them talking about themselves, your networking is so much easier, because then you don't have to say anything. You don't have to try and be interesting. One of the phrases I heard very on was be interested, not interesting, right? And the more you listen to people, the more you try and understand them, the more they will engage with you, and the more they'll remember you. They will not remember that person who ran around the room with a business card, flinging them in these people's hands. They'll remember them as a joke, but they won't remember them as a person. And I used to go to networking events where there was like 200, we used to have 200-300 people at ours, but I would only want to have 1 or 2 quality conversations, maybe 3 in an evening. That's all I'd want. I wouldn't want to, I would never worry about the other 200 people I hadn't spoken to. I just want to speak to 1 or 2 people, find out who they are, where they're from, what they're doing, why they're there, and just engage with them.
You really impact people when you spend more time with them, don't you? And not just looking at the time thinking, well, I've only got 15 minutes to chat with people before the speaker comes on or something like that. I'm going to run around and talk to as many people as I can. I think that's a great bit of advice there that you're saying to people, that spend quality time, go deeper in the conversation, because you're more memorable that way and you learn more about them. And you can follow up with them afterwards.
And be a regular. Sorry.
That is absolutely the next thing I was going to say, and I'm glad you said that. Is you get to know the other people if you're a regular. If you were just there for one night, then yeah, you're never. I can see why people are running around the room, because they're not coming back, but you're still not going to get anything from it potentially.
No.
And on that note, following on from this conversation, do you have any actionable tips? Obviously, no one can go live networking at the moment because of the whole COVID situation.
Yeah.
But someone new to property, or even seasoned professionals, next time they go in, do you have any actionable tips that people can do when they go?
I always say to people, if you're going to go, commit to go for a year, right? Turn up every month, because if they're once a month, just turn up every month. Put it in your diary as an appointment or something, and go, because it will. Each time you go, your confidence will grow, but also your network will grow. And when you go there with a purpose. What do you want to learn? Who do you want to meet? Do you need to find a mortgage broker? Do you need to find a business partner? Do you need to find someone of this? If you go there with a purpose, generally your conversations will be around that purpose, and you'll find your conversations are more fulfilled. And the chances are somebody you meet will actually introduce you to that person that you want to meet. If you turn up with no purpose and just thinking, oh, I'll just go along and see what happens, guess what happens? Not a lot. And it's just simple. And, business cards, people get so hung up on them, right? All you need on your business card is your name, your contact number, and possibly an email address, because people need to be able to get hold of you afterwards. And there's nothing easier than just handing over a card saying, look, if you want to stay in touch, please call me, right? But that's it. But what we used to do after every single networking event was we used to email every single person we met. So we get 2 or 3 business cards, and I'd drop them an email afterwards. Say, it was nice to meet you last night at such and such place. Stay in touch. Because I never relied on the other person to save my contact details or to stay in touch. I always relied on me being the proactive person to do that. So
yeah, that is something, isn't it? Is the stay in touch and the follow up, and people potentially put so much pressure on themselves, to follow up. They think they have to add value straight away. But for me, some of the best relationships I've had in property have developed over time, and you don't necessarily end up doing business with them straight away, or you might not do business directly with them, but
Mm.
you get put in touch with someone else who they know, and you find it's actually quite a small community in the grand scheme of things. I find that it's actually its own bubble, the UK
Yeah.
property market for sure.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you've got that you could recommend to people when they're going?
I mean, one thing is, and I've seen it so many times, and I've seen it with, um, it's happened to me. It happened to me on a number of occasions. Is people don't listen to you or ask you any questions. I mean, I remember once standing at the front of the meeting, and it was at the end, and I saw this guy coming towards me, and I went, "Oh, this isn't going to be good." Right? And he came charging up to me, and he just started pitching, right? And he was just like, ah. And it was, to be honest, it was just like hilarious. It was it was actually wanting me to invest in a coconut farm in Brazil. Don't ask me why. Why he thought I would need it, right? But that was his pitch. And I thought, you've not even introduced yourself. You've not asked. Obviously, you know my name because I'm running the event, but you've not introduced yourself. You've not asked me any questions. You've not found out if this thing is actually relevant to me, and you've just gone full on, right? And it's just so off-putting. Whereas if he'd actually sat back and said, you know, hi, I'm so and so. This is it. This is what I do. You know, or this is what do you do? What are you interested in? Where do you invest? And then maybe mentioned, said, look, do you know someone who could be interested in X, Y, or Z? He might have got a better response, but they just go full on at me, and I'm just like, no, mate, I'm not interested.
I think that's an absolute powerful line that I want to touch on that you just mentioned there. That instead of like, I never recommend asking for something straight away like that. Anyway, that's a big
Yeah,
thing to ask. But if you are going to ask for something at some stage, do you know anyone who might be interested in
yeah,
this? So, do you know anyone who might be interested in? And you are not directly asking them. It is then up to them to decide whether it's for them or not, if that
mm,
makes sense. So I think that's an absolute powerful thing to say. And having a game plan, and I don't mean having a game plan when it's just all about you, but you got to have some sort of plan going into these rooms, because you need to make sure that you're stepping outside of your comfort zone and actually getting value. And one thing is, for me, this is just a game plan I used to have. And you can tell me if it's terrible or if it's wrong. I'd love to hear your feedback on it. But I used to do what you said. I didn't want to have 10 conversations with people. I wanted to have 3 to 5. And I wanted to make sure that I followed up with those people and have a good conversation with them. A second thing I used to do was, if I had a burning question that I really was struggling with that month or that week, then find someone to ask that question to. It's something that you can get answered. This is a great community property. People have the answers.
mm,
In a room full of 250 people, I'm sure someone knows the answer to that question. They might be able to answer it there and then. And the third one, and probably most important, was, if someone else has a burning question that you know the answer to, help them, give back, because it's not just about take. You can build a
yeah.
better relationship with people if you give first. And I always wanted to try and give back where I could. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that approach at all, really.
It's great. That's what you got. You know, if somebody said to me that's what they're going to do, I said just keep doing that. Just do that, right? Have a purpose, ask questions, and if you can help people, definitely ask. You know, if you can put somebody, that's why I always used to ask people where they're from, because you never know who else in the room that you're going to. There'd be so many times somebody said, oh, where are you from? I like, if they said they're from Uxbridge, and 10, 15 minutes later, we chat to somebody else and they go, oh, where are you from? They go, from Uxbridge. And I go, oh, right, I just met so-and-so over there. Do you know them? No. I go, well, go and chat to them. Go and have a coffee with them. They're from the same area. And just putting people together like that is just simple little thing like that, and just helping people. And there were so many people who got into business together simply by saying, just ask people where they're from and if they know anybody else from that area.
It is a simple icebreaker, isn't it? And I think that's a
Mm.
good question for people to start with. If you don't know where to start and you think, oh, I don't have enough value for people, again, great question. Just ask them where they're from. people can talk for ages on that. That they everyone has an answer. It's not
Yeah.
a question where they're like, oh, I don't know. I don't want to speak to you. It's not going to happen. They're always going to get into a conversation with you. I think that's a great little icebreaker question.
It's simple, you know. I mean, there's so much knowledge in a room. The more people in the room, the more the knowledge grows exponentially. And they will know someone who knows the answer to your question, or they will know someone who knows someone of the answer to your question. And the other thing is not to be afraid to ask. Don't think you're going to be, you know, I'm going to look silly if I ask this question. You're going to look more silly if you don't ask the question and you don't find the answer to your problem. And then you go away frustrated thinking, oh, that networking event was useless. But did you ask? Did you ask the people? Did you ask someone? Go and ask the person. People used to come and ask me, and I'll say, look, I don't know the answer to that. And I used to be very upfront with them. I don't know the answer to that, but I know someone who does. You need to go and speak to that person over there. Or that person over there might know someone. And the number one question people that I used to be asked is, people had, you all know this, finance, money. I don't have any. How do I get it? Right.
That's
and they're
interesting.
looking for a
Yeah.
shortcut to find the money. And I always used to say to them, you need to start talking to people and you need to get that thought out of your head. And you just need to have conversations with people as if they're normal people. And you'll never know who you're going to talk to. And they said, well, I ain't got time for that. I'm in a hurry. I said, well, you've got to build relationships with people, because the people with the money, the smart people with the money, won't be interested.
Yeah, they didn't make that money by just giving it to random people that they don't know and don't trust at the end of the day. Smart people really have the money, and they won't go around telling people, will they? It will be the least likely person in the room who has the money. It tends to be as well, actually. Yeah, I've noticed.
I remember I had this guy, he came to our networking, a lovely guy, and the first thing he always said to me was, money, money, money. I said, look, you've got to stop talking about that. You've got to get that topic out of your head. And he goes, where are the people with money in this room? I goes, there's loads of them, right? You just got to start talking to people. Just do what I say. Have a conversation, ask them where they're from, ask them what they do. That's it, right? Don't do any more than that. And then one day he was talking to a bloke who I knew was a guy who liked to invest with people, and he had money behind him. And this bloke was talking to him. And he came back to me. I said, how did you get on? He goes, oh, he hasn't got anything. I said, what did you say to him? And he said, oh, have you got, you know, he started the conversation about money. I went, what did I say to you? Right. And then I spoke to the other guy, the one I knew had money to invest. And I said, what did that bloke say to you? He kept going on about the fact that he was broke and he had no money and he wanted to invest and he didn't have a clue and all that. I said, is he really selling himself to you? He goes, no, he was doing the worst thing ever. Some people have to learn, and some people won't learn.
Hi guys, Raj here, just quickly interrupting this episode to say I hope you're enjoying the podcast and that you're picking up those property investing tips, tricks, and nuggets of information. And if you are, it would mean a great deal if you would subscribe and share this content with your friends. And that way we can continue to get those great guests for you, continue to share their journeys and strategies and lessons for you to learn from. And if there is anything in particular that you want to hear more of, just reach out. Let me know. Email me on raj@propertyinvesting2-0.com. That's raj@propertyinvesting2-0.com. I'll also put that in the episode description. But the more feedback you guys tell me, the more value I can bring for you. But for now, let's get back into the show.
How did we go from zero to having the biggest networking event in the UK in less than 6 months?
Well, that was the question I was going to ask following on from this conversation. So please do tell me, you went from, like you said, 6 months. You've got over 250 attendees every month. How did this even start, the networking event?
Well, the thing is, like you mentioned it earlier, when we started out, I sound very old now, about 10 years ago, it's probably actually more than that, 12, 13 years ago. There was the networking events. We're in Maidenhead in Berkshire. They were in London. There's one in Birmingham, one in Manchester. I think there's one up east somewhere. but there was nothing on the M4 corridor. And Sylvia and I, we were going to Milton Keynes, we were going to Birmingham, we were going to London, we were going to Southampton, all these places to meet people. And we thought there must be people locally who want to network. There must be. And we were back then, we were on a property forum, had over 1,000 people on there before Facebook even existed, if you can remember that. And we looked around and said, right, on a Monday night, there's nothing going on. We'll do something on a Monday. And so Sylvia goes, right, we'll do this, this, this. She was, because she's very detailed, started writing a list. I went on the forum and put Monday night, 7 o'clock, anybody available, we're networking in Maidenhead. And I told Sylvia afterwards, she goes, you've done what? She goes, we've not arranged anything. We haven't even got a venue. I goes, oh, that's not a problem. We'll just meet in a pub. And so we put it on this forum and we told a few of the people that we met through networking. I emailed them, text them and said, you know, this is what we're doing. If you know anybody in Maidenhead, ask them to come down. And so we went to that pub on the Monday night and it was about 7 o'clock and like nobody turned up. And about 7:05, I was saying to Sylvia, well, we can have a meal if nobody turns up. And about 7:05, before 7:10, the 2-3 people turned up and they were both local people and I recognized them from the forum. And it was nice to actually meet people that you've been chatting to online face to face. And then by 8 o'clock, 8:30 at the latest, we had 50 people there. And I was just like, who are all these people and where they come from? And I didn't know any of them. Most of them were not from that forum, but they knew somebody who told them to come down, that there's a nice couple, they're having a networking event to talk about property, go and meet them. And we just sat around and we just had a chat and it was nice to talk to people locally, landlords, talk about experiences, the good things, the bad things. And it was very relaxed. And at the end, everybody kept saying to us, oh, we'll see you at the next one. And Sylvia and I going, what next one? This was supposed to be a one-off. So we did another one and then we got 60, 70, did another one. And I think we started in April, by September, we had about 100 people turning up. And we were just like, this isn't, and we wanted to bring in speakers, but we wanted to do it properly. So we moved to a hotel. And then the thing that really made it take off was 2008, 9, the credit crunch happened. And everybody was doing a particular type of investing that the bank stopped. And then there was all these people who wanted to know how to carry on investing, despite the fact that they couldn't raise finance, couldn't do this, couldn't do that, but they still wanted to buy property. So the natural place for them to go was a networking event. And by that time, we got our sort of marketing together. We were doing stuff on Facebook. We had an email list, which wasn't huge. And January the next year, I think it was 2009, we had 300 people turn up. And we were just like, where have you all come from? But one thing we found is they were hungry to still invest. And they wanted to find out, what can we do if we can't raise finance the way we used to? And then we realized there's such a thirst for knowledge and hunger. And these people don't want to be stopped. They just want to continue. And we just carried on doing this every month. We said, look, we're going to bring you together. And one thing I say to people, look, the person at the front of the room is not the most important person in the room. You know, the speaker is not the most important person in the room. It's the 6 people sat around you. They're the ones you need to speak to. They're the ones you need to start building your network with. And you need to come back every month and keep coming back, keep coming back. And there was one thing we realized, that we saw a lot of the people that became successful were the ones that were regulars.
Yeah, that seems to be a recurring lesson there for people, that commit to it. You know, You're not going to get results overnight. That's property as a whole, that is, isn't it? People think they get results overnight or become millionaires overnight. That's not how it works. It is a process, and you've got to be committed to the long-term journey, really. And going back to how the networking started, what's interested in is that credit crunch actually encouraged people to do more networking. You would think quite the opposite, wouldn't you? You would think, our property is a bad thing to get into right now because the market's crashed.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how it's just made people more resourceful and actually encouraged them to go out and seek out this type of event. Do you think a combination of, I mean, you and Sylvia have to be a big impact on what kept people coming, but also a combination of the timing of when you started the event? Do you reckon that made a big
I think timing, the location, we were on the M4, less than an hour out of London. We were just off the M40. We're very easy to get to. We made it very easy for people to, one of the things we did was made it very easy for people to book and find us. Like from the moment someone decided and landed on a website to book was one click, right? I used to go on other people's websites. You have to click 5 times before you could book. And I'm like, what are you doing? People want to book, let them book. Stop getting in their way, right? If somebody wants to say, yes, take my money, do it. And I found it hilarious. And one thing we wanted to do was give people a place where they could come and they can meet like-minded people and find the answer to the question that they want. It may be from the speaker, it could be from the person that they want. They could come and ask someone else and we put them in touch, and it was all about that. It was about staying together. And one thing I did notice, and this is amazing, because the media haven't got a clue about property. They are usually 6 months to a year behind, as I found out. And when our numbers went up and we hadn't changed our marketing, but the numbers were surging for some bizarre reason, you just look at the newspapers and the newspapers are going, oh, the property market's flying, there's loads of money to be made. And all of a sudden these people go, oh, I need to go into property, right? And our numbers would just naturally shoot up. And as soon as the media said the market's flat, you're not going to make any money and it's difficult, the numbers went down. So you get all these wannabes that wanted to get into property. And I was guilty of this at the start. I think a lot of people start off as speculators. And if they stick at it long enough, they become an investor. And a speculator is relying on the property market going up, not adding value. They're relying on buying something that it's going to add, something's going to miraculous is going to happen and the value is going to go up and they'll make money. Whereas an investor will look at it financially at the numbers and say, right, this is what I'm buying. This is the money it's going to cost me. This is what I need to put in. This is the value I'm going to add. And this is how I'm going to make it worth more. And it's actually one of the things I learned through networking was the difference between being a speculator and an investor. And that's the thing that I learned just purely through conversations with people. And I never would have learned that if I hadn't been going to these networking events, few. But the number one question I always used to ask people is, why are you doing this? Why are you here wanting to get into property? And wanting to buy 100 houses is not a good enough reason. It's got to be something, because if you've been in property a while, there will be challenges. Stuff will happen. Like this pandemic that we're going through right now. Who could have predicted that? We've been doing this, investing in HMOs for about a day. The rules and regulations keep changing. Things keep moving around. It's not, this is what we're doing and this is how it's going to stay. Things are constantly changing. And you've got to be willing to get through that. And you've got to have a long-term, I feel like you've got to have a long-term plan. Not 12 months, I'm talking 3, 7, 10 years. You've got to know where you want to be there to have a real chance of being at it, still doing this properly through the next, however long it takes for you to get there. Because some people get there quickly, but that's usually because they've got a background in something else. They may have run other businesses before. So going into property is just another business. Whereas you, Mr. 9 to 5 like myself, it is a big learning curve. This thing needs fixing first.
Absolutely. And I think that's it. The people who can get quick results sometimes have the fundamentals in place already, right? If you've already got an entrepreneurial mindset and an entrepreneurial brain, that's half the battle, really, to be honest. I think you're able to structure things a certain way. You're able to push through for adversity because you've done it time and time again. And comes back to what you said before about that why you're in it in the first place. And is that something you and Sylvia discovered early on, or did it take time? Did you have to refine it?
It took time. Because we sort of knew we didn't want to keep doing what we were doing, right? So we had an away from goal, but we didn't have a towards goal. What did we really want? And we did property education. There's various courses out there. But one of the things we did was a goal setting course. And the guy that was running it, he sat there. He said, look, if you lived here 80, you've got 4,000 weeks, right? And I sat there thinking, that doesn't actually sound like a lot. And then he goes, if you're over 40, you've got 2,000 left. And I went, now you're really depressing me, right? And then he says, what are you going to do with the next 2,000 that you didn't do with the first 2,000? What are the things that you want to fit into those weeks, right? And then he says, start writing it down. Then I sat there thinking, hold on. My parents are getting into their late 70s. Sylvia's parents are getting to late 70s. How many weeks do they have left? Because it could be years, but it could be weeks, right? They're down into the hundreds, not thousands. And we discussed that, and that became our driving goal, was to free us up from having to work 40 to 60 hours for somebody else and then be stuck in an office, to doing those hours but for our own business and to be available for the people we want to be available for when we want to be available. And that became a driver. And once we've worked that out, our results just suddenly transformed. We were suddenly doing more. We were just finding time and energy that we didn't even know we had to go and hit that goal that we wanted to hit, which was one of us would leave our 9 to 5 first, and then the other one would leave the 9 to 5. We were very risk averse because of our background. We were both 9 to 5ers, so we had a different plan. If we'd run other businesses beforehand and we were more okay with risk, we probably would have done it in half the time.
But at the same time, and this is just an observation I've had over time meeting people, is the entrepreneurial mindset is one thing, but also the clarity on the goals is a completely another thing. You still achieved so much in a relatively short space of time, because it sounds to me you had very clear goals as to where you wanted to be. You said you're only stuck with HMOs, you're only stuck with rent to rent. Though there was a certain strategies, you didn't seem to deviate from those, from what I'm hearing.
Well, when we ran our networking event, we used to sit there and I used to go, right, this person's going to go at the front of the room. They're going to tell you how you can make money doing property strategy X or Y or Z, right? So I used to sit down and I used to go, right, put your blinkers on. I don't care what they say. We've got our strategy. We're sticking to it. Because one thing you have is, if you try and change your strategy, your results will go down before they go back up, because you're having to learn something new. We had a plan where we were sticking to it. We wanted at least number of assets to give us the maximum cash flow local. We didn't want to go up north. We didn't want to go and buy in Liverpool, Manchester, Newcastle, whatever. We wanted to stick local to where we are. We wanted to get a small number of assets. And this is the thing that we knew would work. And we knew HMOs would work because it gave us the cash flow we wanted. It enabled us to raise the finance to be able to buy the property we wanted. But the only thing was the icing on the cake, which we knew we would get locally, which we probably wouldn't get as well the further north we went, was capital appreciation, right? And we thought, actually, we can buy less properties, convert them into 6-bed HMOs, make great cash flow from them. And in the long run, not 12 months, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, they're going to appreciate. And the appreciation was the icing on the cake, not the reason why we did it. The reason we did it was the asset with the cash flow.
So I assume one of your goals originally, was to replace your income as quickly as possible through income producing assets, and HMOs was that particular strategy for you.
I think what people need to be very careful of is trying to replace their income.
Right? I agree.
What they need to do is actually work out, what are your outgoings? Essential outgoings. Golf club and gym membership is not essential. You can go for a walk, you can ride a bike, right? Sky TV is not an essential, right? What do you have to pay to keep a roof over your head, the lights on, and food on the table? Right? If people broke it down to that simple thing, they'd be surprised how small that figure is compared to what they think they need. And that's a lot more achievable in the short term. And once you achieve that, then you can build on the bigger goals. But, some people think, oh, that's too small a goal for me. Fine. But if you're struggling to think, oh, I've got to replace my salary, well, why not break it down into something a little bit smaller? Why not recover your outgoings first?
Yeah, and I think that's a great lesson there, that what is the minimum viable success for you? And if nothing else, if you just replace those essential incomes, your mortgage, food, electricity, light bills, those things, then once you've achieved that, you can decide if you want to go further than that. But you've kind of compartmentalized the challenge ahead. It's now not 100 properties. I mean, that could be achieved with 2 HMOs potentially. Right.
In some parts of the country, can achieve with one HMO.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
you know,
It comes down to the individual, doesn't it? Like you
yeah,
said, and what their overheads are.
yeah. And it's, you know, if you think about it, if it's 2 HMOs that enable you to pay all your outgoings, and then you can decide what you want to do next. You can go part-time in your work. You could leave your work if you want to. You could take a 12-month sabbatical and say, right, I'm going to give this a go and I'm going to do more with this. Because if you, once you got your cash flow sorted and you got your everything paid every single month, then you can maybe, depending, and it's all different for different people, right? You could go, okay, I could do a project which could take 2 years or 3 years, but I don't need to worry about the cash flow coming in because it's been coming in through this time. And you just got to decide. One thing I always say to people when they say, what property strategy should I do? I always say to them, why are you in property and where do you want to end up? Because you've got to choose the right strategy for you to enable you to achieve your goal in the next 3, 7, 10 years. And a lot of people go off and they'll go and speak to someone about doing some mentoring with them. And I'll say, well, did they actually ask you what you want? Where do you want to end up? Because most of them are like, this is a strategy. This is what I'm going to teach you. Is it the right one? And you've got to sit back and think, actually, that's great, but it's not going to get me what I want. It's going to make me a load of money, but is it what I want? I know people say, yeah, I want loads of money, but you know, if you make £50,000 doing something in property, you've only made the 50 grand. Whereas if you buy a certain amount of assets that generate you cash flow, that cash flow is coming in every single month. And that's a different thing.
And like you said, that comes back to your goals and your wants and your needs. And going back to your goals and your vision for the future, and was having the biggest networking event, speaking in front of all these people, part of those visions and goals, or was that adapted and tweaked over time?
Running a network, we went to a personal development event, and we really loved the atmosphere and the inclusiveness, and it was all about mindset. And then we went back again, and we actually volunteered for them. So we worked in their back office and stuff, and we went 2, 3 times. For why can't we do something similar but for property, right? Not on the scale they were doing. I mean, they had 1,000 people, but something similar. Because one thing we noticed is about all the property speakers we saw were all talking about the how. This is how you do it. 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 And when I'd speak to them and say, you know, when people come on your courses and you tell them how to do it, how many of them actually go and do it? They go, not that many. Right? And I said, why do you think that is? Well, they said it's because their head's not straight. I'm like, okay. So when we started having people speak in our event, I said, you can talk about the how, but you have to talk to people about why and the mindset and getting your head straight. And we pushed personal development a lot from the front of the room. We used to have a book of the month. We used to have a guy who used to turn up, he had a stand and he had all these personal development books. We had, you know, a magazine there about property. I used to always say to people, look, this book, if you don't do anything else from today, go and buy this book and read it. Right? Because certain people have got their stuff sorted and they can get on with it, but a lot of people haven't. And it's limiting beliefs. And I had loads of them and I still have them, but they can be fixed or they can be rearranged. And always we pushed personal development, and having the size of the event we ended up with, I think that was simply because Sylvia and I enjoyed what we were doing so much, and we were very passionate about the people that turned up and helping them, and the word spread. And when you do something really good, the word spreads. And we were relentless in our marketing. I used to get people emailing me or messaging me on Facebook. Would you stop telling us about your event? I said, no. I said, the fact that you've complained means I'm actually doing it right. If I didn't get a complaint at least once a week, I mean, I'm not doing enough. I need to do more. I need someone to complain to me. But, you know, when you're getting 250 people, 200 turn up, 300 occasionally, you've got to be doing something right.
Absolutely. And why, I'm sure this question you got a lot, but why stop when you stopped?
Because the timing was right for us. Because when we started, everybody told us it wouldn't work. So we had this guy who's very knowledgeable, allegedly, said to us, you won't get more than 50 people on a regular basis. And when we started getting 100, I said to him, so we couldn't get 50? And then when we got 200, he said, all right, all right. But we started it because we were passionate about people and property. People first, property second. And people said, what gives you the, and somebody actually asked us, what gives you the right to run this event? You're not property investors, you're not millionaires. I said, this isn't about property, this is about people. Property just happens to be the thing that this event's about, but it's about people more than anything else. We're passionate about people. Yeah, we're investors and we're getting on with it. And we're doing it in our own small way. But this event is about people and helping them get to where they need to get to.
So you're getting towards the end of your networking event, and it just wasn't part of your journey and part of your path anymore. Like, did it go back to what your goals were and it served its purpose? Is that where you're at with it?
What it was, we always wanted it to end when it was doing well. So we wanted it to be up there, not fading away. So we thought, right, we're going to do this and we're going to finish it when it's at the top. And the year before we finished it, it was actually, the numbers were going up a lot. And we thought, do we really want to stop? And then the next year we thought, right, that's it. Because we booked the hotel a year in advance. So we had to actually plan 18 months in advance. And then we booked the speakers. We only booked them for 6 months. We booked the hotel for 6 months. And come January that year, we had our biggest turnout for a January ever. And we're like, what's going on? And then February was the biggest, and March was the biggest ever. Then April, and I thought, why numbers keep going up? What's going on? And then the last month, it was 350 people, but we said, that's it, we're done. And no, people actually kept coming up to the end. We said, we'll see you, at the next one. It goes, no, this is it, we're done. No, you're joking. No, we're not joking. This is it. We're not doing anymore. Done. Because thing is, and people will know this, if you create a space in your life, something better will happen. So we wanted to free up the space, that the time and the energy and the headspace that the Berkshire Meet took to run, to go and do other things that we wanted to do. Little did we know that before we had the start of that year, that I found out that Sylvia was going to have a baby. So the universe already decided that free time you think you're going to have, I'm taking that. And, we've got 2 kids now. We still got HMOs, we've got rent-to-rents, we've got another business. And it's all about, we just wanted to keep doing what we wanted to do. And we loved it. It was great. But sometimes you just got to go, right, that's enough. Even some of the speakers said to us, what are you doing? You got to keep it going. We're like, no, this is it for us. We've made a decision. I don't miss the event, but I miss the people.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it takes such a level of awareness and discipline to know when to say enough's enough, especially when it's at the height. It's at its peak, right? You said the numbers are still going up. That takes a lot of discipline, I think, and a lot of awareness, going back to what your original goals are and what path you're on, and to not get sidetracked if it's not meeting your needs anymore, or if you need to go and do something else with your life.
I think it's people gotta, it's tricky. I had a very good job in IT, right? And I had a very good role where I was working my last job before I left. And everybody thought I was absolutely nuts, right? What are you doing? You're walking away from your gold-plated pension. You're walking away from this. You've got a very secure job. It's in the public sector. It's a university college. You're nuts. But I decided to do that. Decided to move house. Decided to go and go contracting. And it's sometimes you just got to think, actually, why am I doing this? And is it still serving me? And if it isn't, you can carry on doing it, or you can think, actually, you know what, I need to go and do something different. But it's all down to individuals. You've got to have a choice. You've got to choose. Sometimes you've got to go and do the complete opposite to what everybody else is expecting you to do. And you'll find, one of my friends said to me, 12 months from now, when I left my job, he goes, you'll realize it was the best decision you ever made and you should have done it sooner.
Well, on that, how do you monitor? How do you specifically monitor your goals and your journey? Is there a certain question you ask yourself every so often? Do you write them down every so often? How do you monitor where you're going with your journey?
It's like this time of year, 2020 has been completely weird, so everything's sort of gone all over the place, is we actually sit down and we sort of do a sort of not, we used to do them a lot more seriously, but we do an audit of what we achieved in the previous 12 months. And there was this document I found on the internet. I think it's a Tony Robbins document. And you used to fill out, what have you achieved in the past 12 months and how far have you got towards your goals? And you just be honest with yourself, and then you write down a new set of goals. What is it that you want to achieve next? How much, what goals you didn't achieve do you still want to achieve? Some of the goals you set out may not have been really the right ones for you. And then actually, what do you want to achieve going forward? And then just by sitting down and writing that down and working it out, it helps to work out, am I on the right path?
We're getting towards the end of the sit down now, but I want to go back and ask you a little bit more about the types of deals that you do. I know you focus on HMOs, but do you have one or two buying rules that you have when you are looking for certain properties?
They have to meet a criteria. We know now that any property we buy, we're never going to do less than 6 rooms, right? They have to, we got a spreadsheet, we type the figures in, we know what we're going to rent a double room for, an ensuite room for, a single room for. So we're going to get 6 rooms in the property, depending on the mix of doubles, singles, and ensuites. We know how much cash flow is going to generate. We know what debt we're going to have. We know, all the figures break down, and going forward, what's it going to actually give back to us? And we put the numbers into that spreadsheet. If it comes back, doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter how great the house looks, doesn't matter what the location is, all this kind of stuff. If the figures don't add up, it's just got to be a purely emotionless decision. Do the figures add up? Can we make it work, right? If he's not going to give us 6 rooms, we're not even going to bother. And it's purely down to the numbers now. And I remember many years ago, somebody said to us, it's a box that makes you money. You've got to remove the emotion from it. You're not going to live there. Does it fit your criteria, right? And if it doesn't, walk away, because there'll always be more. And there always are. There are so many properties out there. There are 20 million houses in the UK. I don't know, millions, right? And the moment you start believing that there isn't going to be another deal, then you're in trouble. But the moment you realize, actually, doesn't matter if this one works, there's another one. Doesn't matter if this one works, there's another one. And if you keep looking, you will find them. They're always there. Some of them right under your nose.
I think that's it. People try and push the figures so much on a deal because they desperately want it to work, because we've got a finite belief sometimes, don't we? We get emotional about that specific property. And thinking it's a box that just makes you money and there's another one around the corner is a great way to just take the emotion out of it, and focus on, does it stack however you want it to stack. And you said you only focus on 6 beds. Is that 6 beds as a minimum? Do you go above 6 beds, or do you just want 6 beds?
For us, it started out because when we started out doing it locally, if it was a 6 bed, you didn't need planning. So if you went 7, 8, 9, you needed planning. And then you got other departments of the council involved, which you don't really want, like highways and all kinds of stuff. So a 6 bed really worked. Financially, a 6 bed worked. Finding properties that we could convert into a 6 bed was easier. So for us, we thought, right, we found our solution. We know what we want. We know what the figures are. We know we can rent them out. So we'll just, once you've done one, you repeat it on the second one, you repeat it on the third, and you just keep moving on. You will make different mistakes on the first, on the second, you make a different mistake on the third and fourth. So things will happen that didn't happen before. And it's always a learning curve. No matter how much experience you got, something will happen that hasn't. But financially, we know that works for us. Now it's compulsory licensing. That's fine, because we set our properties up to be licensable from day one. And it's a strategy that works for us. With our rent to rents, we work with a business partner, and our goal is to still do 6 beds, because we know we can generate enough cash flow to make them viable.
Yeah, whether you own the property or not, the concept is still the same. It's still producing the same types of income at the end of the day. And that's, again, it goes back to knowing a strategy really, really well. You've got momentum in it. You don't have to learn something completely different. They complement each other very well, don't they? At the end of the day, rent to rent, HMO, and owning it. It's exactly the same thing, effectively.
Yeah, once you get, I mean, I remember there's a guy who did lease extensions, and that's all he did. And he was an expert at it. You could ask him any question on it, and he knew the answer. And he was making a fortune on it because he became an expert in that one thing, and then people went to him. And, once you become very good at something, then you can, if you want to, you can diversify. People have multiple income streams. That's not a problem. I think one of the challenges we had in the early days was we were exposed to so many different ways to make money in property. We didn't know which way to turn. Our head was spinning, right? It was only when we sat down and went, this is what we want to do. This is why we want to do it. This is what we want to achieve. Okay, this strategy is the one that's going to make it happen.
And how long did that journey take for you? It'll be different for everyone, but an idea.
It didn't happen straight away.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the problem was because we were very risk averse and there was lots of other things going on and we wanted to do, and I think it all comes back to where your experience in the past is from, how you view risk, what do you think, what do you experience, what your experience is from people you're around. And the more people we mix with, the more we actually started thinking, actually, this is what we need to do. Because property initially was just buy a couple of properties to hedge our bets against a rubbish pension down the line. It was never really going to be a full-time business, a full-time lifestyle. That happened because of the people we met and what they achieved. And thought, well, if they can achieve that, we can achieve it. And to be honest, I thought some of those people don't look that clever.
Juswant, I've got one last question for you. And it was about if there was a particular failure that you've had that has really helped you get to where you are today in life. Is there anything you can share from that point of view at all?
I've had so many, right? I remember the first time I went into an estate agent to talk to them about, we wanted to deal with source properties. And I was so nervous and I sat down and I was talking to this guy and I can feel the sweat running down the back of my neck. And I have no idea what came out of my mouth. And the bloke just looked at me and goes, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I went, yeah, neither do I. And I left. But 3 years later, that agency gave us our best HMO deal.
The persistence to go back. And I think that's incredible. Like you said, to not be put off by that experience and to go back and carry on.
Mate, I learned from falling over flat on my face numerous times, getting back up and going, right, I'll just try again. And one thing funny was when we got the HMO from that agency, we found it on Rightmove, but it was with that agency. I remember bumping into him and he goes, oh, you've just bought this property. And yeah. And I thought, I remembered him clearly. He had no clue who I was. Didn't even recognize me at all. And I thought, thank God for that.
Well, that's another thing, isn't it? These moments, because it happens to us, the embarrassment happens to us. We think other people will remember it in the same way, and
same emotion.
It's a fleeting visit. For them, it's just a little moment that happened in their day. For you, it was a bigger event in your life. And look what you said. 3 years later, they didn't even know who you were. You've come back. You're more experienced. You know what you're doing, and you've picked up your best deal yet.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. Juswant, I'm going to have to end there. I appreciate your time coming out and joining us today and sharing those lessons, those tips that you've had, especially the insights into networking. For people listening, they're absolute gold. If you take nothing else away from this sit down, it is to get out there and speak to people who are doing the same thing. They are not going to dismiss you. They are there to learn just like you are. Networking is an incredible tool. And Juswant, if people want to follow you and find out more about you, where should they go?
Just connect with me on LinkedIn or connect with me on Facebook, and just drop me a line. Just say hello. Whenever people connect with me I just say, thanks for connecting. How's it going? That's it. If they respond, great. We'll have a conversation. If they don't, fine. That's it. Just kind of touch base with people. That's how we ended up talking.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Simple as that, isn't it? Just reach out and you never know what happens. What's the worst that's going to happen?
Probably you worry about it more than the other person. The other person will forget and you'll be like, oh my, I shouldn't have done that. And they can't even remember who you are. Thank God, most of the time.
Juswant, thank you very much again for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and hopefully we get to catch up again in
No
the near
problem.
future.
Thank you for having me on here.
Thank you. Cheers.